I've never been the kind of woman who acts on impulse. My entire life has been built on order, monthly planners, tidy schedules, and decisions made after long thought. But the uneasiness that had been crawling across my chest for days finally pushed me past every habit I ever lived by. Neither my son Adrian nor my daughter-in-law, Lena, had answered my calls for almost a week. At first I told myself they were busy, but a mother's heart knows when something is wrong, and this time it screamed, so I broke my own rules. I shut down my office early, packed nothing but the essentials, and booked the next flight across the country without telling anyone. I was coming, not even my son. Airports usually comfort me. The smell of coffee, the sound of rolling luggage, families running toward reunions. But that morning, everything felt muted, far away, like I was watching life through a window instead of living it. In my bag lay 2 jars of homemade berry jam Adrian loved as a boy, and a small plush bear I bought on instinct. Something soft for Lena, whose voice had sounded faint the last time we spoke. When I reached their neighborhood, the weight in my chest hardened. Their condo, the one I bought for them as a wedding gift to give them a strong start, looked normal from the outside. But the front door wasn't fully shut. It hung slightly open as if someone left in a rush. I pushed it with my shoulder. The smell hit me first, a thick mix of stale alcohol, old food, and something sour that didn't belong to a home. The living room looked like it had been swallowed by chaos. Shoes on the floor, bills scattered, empty bottles on the counter. But what froze me wasn't the mess. It was the small box of sealed medication sitting on the table, Lena's heart pills, untouched, covered in dust. My breath caught. Something terrible had happened here. A cracked voice startled me. An elderly neighbor stood at the doorway, her eyes soft with pity. "Oh, honey, your daughter-in-law was taken by ambulance 2 or 3 days ago. She didn't look conscious. Your son? Haven't seen him?" The world spun around me. I don't remember leaving the apartment. I only remember the cab door slamming and the words, City West Medical Center, leaving my mouth as if someone else spoke them. When I reached the ICU and saw Lena lying pale, fragile, and fighting for life, the first real question hit me. Where was Adrian? Minutes later, outside the hospital, I saw something that shattered every illusion I ever had about my son and changed the course of my life forever. ICU hallways have a strange silence, thick, cold, and heavy enough to make a person feel small. Machines hummed around Lena as she lay motionless, her face pale as paper, her body frail beneath tangled wires. Dr. Alden explained her condition in a steady, clinical tone: severe pneumonia, dehydration, prolonged fever, and exhaustion. Months of neglect, he said. Not days, months. My hands shook as I held the cold metal railing beside her bed. Where had Adrian been while his wife slipped into this state? Why had no one helped her? The questions screamed in my mind, but the answers were nowhere in that room. I stepped out to breathe, to steady myself, to stop the tearless panic clawing at my throat. The evening fog hung low over the hospital entrance. Traffic lights cast blurry halos on the wet pavement. I stood there, arms crossed tightly, when the roar of an engine sliced through the quiet. A midnight black SUV drifted around the corner, bass-heavy music shaking the windows of the hospital building. The vehicle was expensive, obscenely expensive, and painfully familiar. I bought it. For my son, a month ago. The moment it stopped at the light, I saw him, Adrian, behind the wheel, head thrown back in laughter. 2 young women, their hair flying out the windows, squealed beside him as if they were in a nightclub on wheels. He didn't glance at the hospital. Not even once. Not toward the ICU where his wife was fighting for breath. And in that moment, something inside me cracked, not loudly, not dramatically, but quietly, like thin ice breaking under pressure. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A message from Adrian. "Hey, Mom, I'm at the hospital with Lena. I'm exhausted. Haven't left her side. Pray for us." I stared at the glowing screen, the words blurring, not from tears, but from something colder. He was lying. Not just lying, crafting a perfect performance of devotion, while speeding past the building with strangers and music shaking the night. I didn't call him, didn't scream, didn't demand answers. Instead, a frightening clarity settled in me, heavy, still, merciless. He wasn't confused. He wasn't lost. He was choosing this life, over and over again. I turned back toward the hospital, each step feeling heavier than the last. My heart wasn't breaking, it was hardening. In that moment I knew. Saving Lena was now my responsibility, and holding Adrian accountable, that was my duty. The old mother inside me died. A new woman took her place. The first step in protecting Lena was harsh, but necessary. And it began with one phone call that changed Adrian's life forever. I walked back into the hospital lobby with a mind, colder than the marble floor beneath my feet. The vending machine hummed in the corner as I sat, down on one of the hard plastic chairs. I needed time, just a few minutes, to bury the last illusion that Adrian was the boy I raised. The boy who used to run into my arms with scraped knees. The boy who once cried when a goldfish died. The boy who said he'd take care of me one day. That boy was gone. And the man I saw behind the wheel of that SUV, that man was a stranger wearing my son's face. My hands didn't tremble as I reached for my phone. The decision was already made the moment he sped past Lena's hospital window. I dialed 911. 911, what's your emergency? A tired voice answered. My name is Marissa Rowan, I said, every word precise. I'd like to report my vehicle stolen. There was a pause. Please provide the make, model, and license plate. Black Titan SUV, I replied. License number 9X202. The words slid out like a verdict. When did you last see the vehicle, ma'am? I swallowed, eyes fixed on the glass doors. 10 minutes ago. A man is driving it right now down Oak Ridge Avenue, heading toward the downtown club district. Do you know the suspect? My jaw tightened. No, I said. I do not. And for the first time, I wasn't lying. I also need to report the driver may be intoxicated. Loud music, erratic swerving. There are passengers in the car. Their safety may be in danger. Units are being dispatched, the dispatcher replied. Please stay on the line. I hung up. It was done. There was no satisfaction, no thrill, no sense of triumph. Just a heavy, numb certainty. This was the only language Adrian understood. Consequences. I stood up, smoothed the wrinkles out of my coat, and walked back toward the ICU. The lights flickered softly over the linoleum as I passed. Nurses and doctors rushing through their routines. The world kept turning, uncaring of the storm I had just unleashed. At Lena's door, I paused. She still lay unconscious, her chest rising and falling with the mechanical rhythm of the ventilator. Her hand felt small in mine, too small for someone who had endured so much suffering alone. You won't be alone again, I whispered. Not while I'm still breathing. My phone buzzed. An unknown number flashed across the screen. I knew before answering that it wasn't good news, but I answered anyway. Mrs. Rowan? A firm male voice asked. This is Officer Rains. We've stopped your vehicle. The driver is claiming to be your son. Can you confirm? My heart didn't shake. No, officer, I replied quietly. I cannot. The officer's next words shattered whatever pieces were left and pushed me toward a decision even harsher than the first. The silence on the phone stretched for a moment, thick enough to make the fluorescent lights above me hum louder. Officer Rains finally exhaled on the other end, as if my answer confirmed the suspicion he already carried in his gut. Understood, ma'am, he said. We'll proceed accordingly. The driver is being arrested for vehicle theft, driving under the influence, and resisting detention. I didn't flinch. Behind him, I heard shouting, a voice I recognized even through the static distortion. Call my mom. She'll tell you. This is a mistake. Do you know who I am? Adrian's voice, my son's voice, the same voice that once asked for bedtime stories, now barked like an entitled stranger. I'm sorry you had to hear that, the officer said. It's fine, I replied calmly. Do what you need to do. When the call ended, it felt as though the world had gone eerily quiet, as if even the hospital had paused to listen. But nothing inside me broke. Nothing inside me wavered. Instead, a strange stillness settled over me, heavy, cold, absolute. My son was sitting in the back of a police car, furious, confused, and certain I would bail him out. But for once in his life, he would be wrong. I sat back down in the lobby, letting the reality sink in, but not emotionally, strategically. Every decision from this moment forward had to be sharp, calculated, deliberate. This wasn't about punishment anymore. It was about protection. Protection for Lena. Protection for myself. Protection from a man who wore the skin of the boy I raised but no longer had the heart I once knew. I opened my contacts and called the one person who could move mountains overnight. Clara Holt, my old friend and the sharpest attorney in the city. She answered by the second ring. Marissa, why are you calling this late? I need legal work, I said. Urgent. Her tone shifted instantly, steel replacing warmth. What happened? Too much, I whispered. I need paperwork drafted by morning, a property transfer, emergency power of attorney, and possibly a legal separation of assets. There was a pause. Marissa, is this about Adrian? It's about saving a life, I said. Lena's and my own sanity. Clara didn't ask more. Come to my office at 8 a.m. Everything will be ready. I ended the call just as my phone buzzed again. Voicemail. From jail. Adrian? His voice cracked with anger and desperation. Mom, what are you doing? This isn't funny. Get me out of here. You owe me. Those last 3 words pierced the quiet. You owe me. No, I thought. Not anymore. At dawn, I walked into Clara's office with one mission, to rewrite the future, and to strip Adrian of the power he had abused for years. Morning light had barely touched the skyline when I stepped out of the cab in front of Clara. Holt's building. The city was still waking up. Street vendors unlocking carts, office workers yawning over their first coffee, the sky stained with pale orange. But inside me there was no sunrise, only the cold determination of a woman who had stopped being afraid. Clara's office smelled like polished wood and strong espresso. She stood behind her desk, already dressed in a charcoal suit, her glasses perched low on her nose. One look at my face, and I saw her expression shift from professional readiness to quiet concern. You didn't sleep, she said. Couldn't, I answered. On the desk lay a neatly arranged stack of documents, each clipped, highlighted, and waiting for my signature. Clara tapped the top file. This is the property transfer. The condo will legally belong to Lena, sole owner, by noon today. The words made something tight in my chest loosen just a little. For the first time since this nightmare began, a sliver of control returned to me. And this, she continued, handing me another folder, is a general power of attorney for you. You'll be able to manage everything on her behalf. Medical decisions, finances, safety measures. I nodded, flipping through the papers slowly, absorbing each line. Every signature was like carving away another piece of the illusion that Adrian would ever change. Clara hesitated before picking up the last folder. This one, you need to see for yourself. She handed me a thin file. Bank statements, loan applications, digital screenshots. And then the final page. A forged document with my name, my signature, my identity. All used by Adrian to secure a payday loan behind my back. He tried to use your condo as collateral, Clara said quietly. If the lender had pushed, you could have lost everything. My throat dried. He forged my signature. Sloppily, she corrected, but enough to fool the wrong kind of people. I closed the file. He would have let strangers take the roof over his wife's head. And mine. Clara placed a gentle hand on my arm. Marissa, you know what this means. Yes, I whispered. It means I am done protecting him. I signed every document with a steady hand. When it was over, Clara gathered the folders and nodded. I'll file everything immediately. By this afternoon, Lena will be safe. And Adrian will have nothing left to use. A vibration buzzed in my pocket. A text from an unknown number. I opened it. Mom, they're releasing me soon. I swear I'll fix everything. Please don't do anything stupid. My fingers tightened around the phone. The man texting me was not the boy I raised. And soon, he would realize just how much had changed. But before I even returned to the hospital, I would discover something in their apartment, something that revealed the truth about what Adrian had done to Lena behind closed doors. Before returning to the hospital, I forced myself to do something I had been avoiding since stepping off the plane. I went back to the condo, Clara insisted. I retrieved Lena's ID and a few personal documents required for her medical transfer. I didn't want to walk into that place again. But protecting her meant facing whatever truth the apartment had been hiding. The hallway smelled the same as before, like loneliness sealed behind walls. When I pushed the condo door open, that wave of stale smoke and sour alcohol returned, clinging to the air like a bruise that refused to fade. I moved methodically. Wallet drawer, nightstand, jackets hung on doors. Every corner I checked made the truth more suffocating. This place hadn't been a home for a long time. When I opened the bedroom closet, a stack of linens tumbled out. Kneeling to pick them up, I noticed a thin, worn journal wedged beneath a folded blanket. Lena's handwriting was etched in curling black ink across the faded cover. Something inside me clenched. I sat on the edge of the unmade bed, the journal trembling slightly in my hands, and opened it. April 4th. Adrian said I embarrassed him in front of his friends today. He said I'm useless. He took the money I saved for groceries to buy himself new shoes. My stomach twisted. May 9th. He shut the heating off again. Said I complained too much. I slept in my coat. He said it's not his problem if I'm too weak to handle real life. I felt my fingertips go cold. June 17th. My heart medicine ran out. He promised he'd pick up the refill. He spent the money on drinks instead. I felt dizzy all day. He said I was overreacting. The words blurred for a moment, but I blinked the fog away. I needed to read it, every line. I needed to know exactly how deep the cruelty had gone. August 23rd. He screamed because I asked him to eat dinner with me. He threw the plate. I told him I felt scared. He laughed and said no one would ever believe me over him. A slow burn ignited in my chest. A mother's fury. Sharp, ancient, unforgiving. This wasn't neglect. This was systematic destruction. The last entry was the one that broke me. October 2nd. I've been sick for days. Fever won't go down. I begged him to take me to a doctor. He said he had plans. I don't think he cares if I wake up tomorrow. I closed the journal slowly, carefully, as if it were a fragile piece of evidence, because it was evidence of pain, of manipulation, of a woman surviving in silence. Not anymore, I said aloud, the empty apartment swallowing my voice. No one is ever going to hurt you again, Lena. Not ever. I slipped the journal into my bag and walked out without looking back. But when I returned to the hospital, Lena woke up, and the first words she whispered confirmed that the danger wasn't over. The hospital corridors felt colder when I returned, as if the walls themselves sensed what I had found in that journal. I clutched my bag tightly, the weight of Lena's written pain still pressing against my heart. I expected another quiet vigil beside her bed, machines humming, her still form hidden beneath blankets. But when I stepped into her room, something was different. The monitor beeped faster. Her fingers twitched. And then slowly, like a flower pushing through frost, her eyelids trembled open. "Lena?" I whispered, my voice barely holding steady. Her eyes were glassy, unfocused at first, drifting like someone trapped between two worlds. Then suddenly she saw me. Recognition flickered, and with it came something far deeper, far darker. Fear. Her body tensed sharply, almost violently, as if waking meant falling straight back into danger. She tried to speak, but her voice cracked against the oxygen mask. I leaned closer, my hand gently cupping the back of hers. "It's okay," I murmured. "You're safe. I'm here. You're not alone anymore." Her gaze darted around the room, then back at me. Her lips moved again, faint and broken. I leaned in until her breath brushed my ear. "Don't let him in," she rasped. My heart stopped. "Who, sweetheart? Who are you talking about?" Tears welled sharply in her eyes. She grasped my hand with surprising strength, desperation, giving her power she didn't physically have. "Adrian," she whispered, voice trembling. "Don't let him near me. Please," he said if I ruined things for him again, he'd... Her words dissolved into shaking breaths, but I didn't need her to finish. I already knew. I brushed her hair gently off her forehead, swallowing the storm building inside me. "He won't come near you," I promised. "Not while I'm breathing. I'll protect you." At that moment, the nurse hurried in, alarmed at Lena's racing heart rate. They adjusted her medication, urging her to rest, but Lena's fingers stayed curled around mine until the sedation softened, her fear into drowsiness. Only when her breathing steadied did I step into the hallway, closing the door quietly behind me. I leaned against the wall, exhaling a breath that felt like it carried years of buried guilt. Lena feared him. Not mildly, not nervously, primally, and fear like that didn't come from misunderstandings. It came from trauma. I straightened, my hands balling into fists. Adrian would never again have access to her, emotionally, physically, financially. The law was already moving. The documents were filed. The apartment was hers. But something else lingered in my mind. Adrian didn't know any of this yet. And when a man like him feels control slipping away, he becomes dangerous. And just as that thought crossed my mind, my phone buzzed with a message. Adrian had been released from jail, and he was coming straight to the hospital. The vibration of my phone startled me. I pulled it from my coat pocket, expecting another update from the doctor, or maybe a message from Clara confirming the filings. But it wasn't either of them. It was Adrian. They released me. "I'm coming to the hospital. We need to talk. Don't make things worse, Mom." "Worse?" The word punched through my skull like a hammer. He had no idea how much worse things already were. I stared at the message for a long moment, letting the cold truth settle. Adrian wasn't coming out of love, fear, or even guilt. He was coming because losing control terrified him, because deep down, he believed everything still belonged to him, my attention. Lena's safety, the apartment, the car, the lie of his life. I tucked the phone away and walked toward the lobby. I needed to be there before he arrived. I needed to protect Lena before he even stepped foot on her floor. The elevator chimed behind me, and then the doors slid open. Adrian stumbled out, his clothes wrinkled, his hair disheveled, and his face still, bearing the bruised shadow of exhaustion or perhaps consequence. But there was no humility in his expression, only rage simmering beneath a thin mask of indignation. He spotted me instantly. "There you are," he snapped, his voice echoing through the quiet lobby. "Mom, what the hell did you do? They treated me like a criminal! A criminal, Mom!" I didn't move, didn't rise, didn't soften. I simply looked at him with a calmness he didn't know how to fight. "You are a criminal," I said evenly. His face reddened, eyes bulging. "You reported your own son? Are you insane? Do you understand how humiliating that was?" "Yes," I said, "and necessary." He stepped closer, pointing an accusing finger at me. "You think you're some hero? You think you're saving Lena? You're making everything worse! You don't know anything about our marriage." "I know enough," I replied. "More than you think." His jaw twitched. "I'm going to see her." "No," I said calmly. "You're not." His voice rose into an animalistic growl. "She's my wife." A shadow moved behind him. A large man in uniform stepped forward, blocking the hallway that led to ICU. The private security guard I had hired. He placed a hand the size of a brick wall onto Adrian's shoulder. "Sir, you're not authorized to go past this point." Adrian spun, outraged. "Get your hands off me. I'm her husband." The guard didn't move. "She's a critical patient, and under protective supervision." Adrian looked back at me, angry, confused, and terrified of losing the power he always believed he deserved. "This isn't over," he hissed. "You can't shut me out." But for the first time in years, I realized, yes, I absolutely could. What Adrian didn't know was that the apartment locks were already being changed, and he was about to lose the last thing he thought he controlled. After the confrontation in the lobby, Adrian stormed out of the hospital with the fury of a man who believed the world owed him obedience. His footsteps echoed down the hallway, heavy with entitlement. He didn't look back, because in his mind, the situation was temporary. He believed he still had a home waiting for him. A throne, a place he controlled. But he didn't know that his kingdom had already fallen. Clara had been swift. By the time Adrian's rage pushed him out of the hospital doors, the locksmiths were already standing outside the condo building with toolboxes in hand, accompanied by 2 police officers overseeing the legal paperwork. The new ownership had been registered. The authorization was printed. The locks were coming off. Adrian had no idea that the only home he thought he owned no longer belonged to him. I received the update just as he disappeared into the parking lot. A message from Clara. "Lock change in progress. Officers present. Everything is legal." A weight lifted from my chest. Meanwhile, Adrian reached the condo in a furious sprint. He didn't even wait for the elevator. He took the stairs 3 at a time, wild desperation fueling his speed. By the time he reached the 3rd floor, his breath was sharp and ragged, but his mind was focused on one thing: taking back control. But when he turned the corner toward the apartment, he froze. The door wide open. 2 locksmiths kneeling. Screws, bolts, and a shiny new lock lying on the ground. A police officer watching them calmly. And beside him, Clara Holt, arms crossed, expression carved from stone. Adrian stumbled forward, voice cracking with disbelief. "What are you doing?" "That's my apartment. You can't touch my property." Clara raised an eyebrow. "Your property? Do you have documentation to support that?" He fumbled. "My mother bought this place for me. Everyone knows that." "Correction," Clara said smoothly. "Your mother bought it, and she just legally transferred ownership to Lena Rowan. As of this morning, you have no legal rights to enter." Adrian's face turned bright red, then pale, then red again. The humiliation hit him like a physical blow. "You're lying," he whispered, voice trembling. "Mom would never do that, never." Officer Rains, one of the same officers from his arrest, stepped forward. "Sir, you are no longer registered at this residence. You must leave immediately." Adrian's eyes darted to the open doorway. In a panic, he tried to push past them. I have clothes. My laptop, my sneakers. I'm getting my things. A worker stepped out with 2 overstuffed trash bags and a cheap duffel. We packed what we could. The rest belongs to the owner. The officer dropped the bags at Adrian's feet. That was everything he had left in the world. Adrian stood frozen, staring at the pathetic pile, the truth finally sinking into his bones. His mother had cut him off. His wife wanted him gone. His kingdom was gone. His power was gone. He was nobody. But losing the apartment was only the beginning, because the next thing he lost was the money he thought he could still rely on. Adrian stood in the dim hallway outside the condo, staring at his life stuffed into plastic bags. The fury in his eyes was replaced by something worse. Panic. Real panic. The kind that comes when a man realizes the world no longer bends for him. He grabbed the duffel, yanked it open, and rummaged through it furiously. Where's my wallet? He barked. My cards? My documents? Where's my stuff? The police officer didn't blink. Anything with Lena's name remained inside. Anything purchased with her accounts also stayed. You were given what legally belongs to you. Legally belongs to me? Adrian laughed, an unhinged, hollow sound. Everything in there belongs to me. I paid for that TV. I paid for the furniture. A locksmith interrupted softly. Sir, the receipts we found were all in Lena's name. Everyone. Adrian's face drained of color. He barely managed to choke out a response before storming past them, dragging his bags behind him as the officer escorted him outside. His hands shook with rage, and something like disbelief. On the curb, he dropped everything and pulled out his phone. I knew what was coming before it happened. He opened his banking app and froze. The screen displayed a message he never expected. Account frozen. Contact administration. His face twisted. No. He tried the second card, then the third. Every account frozen. Every auto payment canceled. Every line of credit blocked. The bank had complied with Clara's emergency filings. His access was cut off because of the forged documents and suspicious transactions. Legally, he no longer controlled a single dollar. He dropped onto the curb, hands in his hair. You can't do this to me, he whispered to no one. You can't take everything. But I had, and not out of revenge, out of necessity. While he spiraled on the sidewalk, Clara called me with the update. It's done, she said softly. He has no access to funds. No access to the condo, and no legal ground to challenge it. I exhaled slowly, my eyes on Lena's fragile frame inside her hospital room. Thank you, Clara. You're doing the right thing, she replied. He would have destroyed both of you. Maybe so. But even knowing that, hearing Adrian, my son, reduced to a desperate man with nothing, it still left a bitter ache in my chest. I looked at Lena, asleep and safe for the moment. Then at my phone, buzzing again. Another message from Adrian. Mom, I know you're behind this. Meet me. We're fixing this. You don't get to ruin my life. Ruin his life? He hadn't even realized yet. This was only the beginning. Because the moment Adrian lost his money, he turned to the one thing he still had left. Anger. And that anger sent him straight back to the hospital doors, with a plan that nearly destroyed everything. For hours, the hospital hummed with the usual rhythm, nurses moving quietly, machines beeping steadily, doctors rushing between rooms. But beneath that calm surface, a storm was brewing. Adrian, the moment he lost access to the condo, his money, and his illusions of control. Something inside him snapped. Clara had warned me. The officer had warned me. Even Lena, half-conscious, shaking, had begged me to keep him away. But anger gives lost men courage, or something that looks like courage. I stood by Lena's bedside, fixing the blanket around her frail shoulders, when the nurse rushed in. Ms. Rowan, she whispered urgently. Security is asking for you downstairs. There's an issue. My heart sank. I already knew the name of the issue. I hurried to the elevators and stepped into the lobby. There he was. Adrian stood in the center of the room, shoulders heaving, eyes bloodshot from rage and sleeplessness. His hair was wild, his clothes dirty, his entire presence buzzing with desperate fury. He looked nothing like the smooth, confident man who once charmed everyone around him. He looked unhinged. And he wasn't alone. 2 hospital security guards stood around him, forming a barrier. But Adrian wasn't backing down. The moment he saw me, he pointed at me with shaking hands. You, he shouted. You turned my life into hell. Do you think I'm just going to disappear? You think you can replace me? The entire lobby fell silent. Even the receptionist froze. I stepped closer, but not too close. Adrian, lower your voice. No, he roared. I'm done being quiet. I'm done letting you control everything. Lena is my wife. That condo is my home. Those accounts are mine. I kept my voice low, calm, like talking to a cornered animal. You lost them because of what you did, Adrian. No one took anything from you. You gave it away with your actions. But he wasn't listening. He lunged forward, only for security to block him instantly, hands outstretched. Don't touch me, he shouted. I'm going upstairs. I'm talking to Lena. She owes me an explanation. I stepped forward stronger than I felt. You're not going near her. And who's going to stop me? You? He laughed, a broken, cruel sound. Mom, you're weak. You always have been. I know you're bluffing. I looked at the security guard. He nodded once. Mr. Rowan, the guard said firmly. You are officially banned from this hospital until further notice. You will leave immediately, or officers will remove you. Adrian froze. Then his rage shifted, slowly, into something far more dangerous. A smile, cold, sharp, empty. Fine, he whispered. If I can't get inside, I'll find another way. He walked backward toward the doors, eyes locked on mine. This isn't over, Mom, not even close. And then he left. But the chill he left behind stayed. That night, I discovered exactly what he meant when a stranger knocked. On my door with a message from Adrian. And a threat that made my blood run cold. I didn't go home that night. I couldn't. Not after the way Adrian had looked at me. Like a man who had nothing left to lose. Instead, I booked a small room in the hotel across from the hospital. Close enough to reach Lena within minutes if anything happened. The room was quiet, dimly lit, with beige walls and a single window overlooking the parking lot. I sat on the edge of the bed, shoes still on, staring at the journal in my hand. Lena's words, her pain, her fear, they echoed louder now that I'd seen the fury in Adrian's eyes. I wanted to sleep, but my mind refused to rest. I kept replaying the moment he smiled at me in the lobby. That smile had been a warning, not a gesture. A promise of trouble. It was nearly midnight when it happened. A knock. Sharp, urgent. Wrong. I froze. No one knew what room I had booked. Not the hospital. Not Clara. Not even the nurses. I stood slowly, tension winding through my ribs. The knocking came again, harder this time. I approached the door quietly and looked through the peephole. A stranger stood there, tall, hood pulled low, hands shoved into his pockets. He rocked on his heels, impatient and restless. Something about his posture made my stomach tighten. I didn't open the door. Yes? I called through the wood. He leaned closer, voice low and rough. You Marissa Rowan? My pulse hammered. Who are you? He glanced down both sides of the hallway, then back at the door. Got a message for you. I stepped back, instinctively clutching the journal against my chest. What message? He sighed loudly, annoyed, and looked straight into the peephole. From Adrian. My breath hitched. I didn't answer. He continued, voice cold and careless, like someone used to delivering trouble. He said, and I'm quoting him, "Tell her she can run, she can hide, but I always get what's mine." My skin prickled. The stranger tapped the door lightly with one knuckle, almost mockingly. Also said you should stop making things difficult. Said if you keep interfering, he'll make sure you regret it. For a moment, the hallway felt suffocating. Then he stepped back, lifted his chin, and added one final line. He says he's not done with Lena, not by a long shot. A chill sliced through me. Before I could respond, he turned and walked away, down the hall, down the stairs, disappearing like smoke into the night. I stood frozen in the center of the room, the reality sinking in like ice. Adrian wasn't just angry. He was escalating. And now he wasn't acting alone. The next morning, I realized Adrian had crossed another line, because someone had attempted to get into Lena's hospital room while she slept. I barely slept that night. Every sound in the hallway, every hum of the elevator made my body tense. I kept replaying the stranger's words at the door, his casual tone, the threat hidden inside his message, and the cruel promise that Adrian wasn't done with Lena. By sunrise, the hotel room felt suffocating. I grabbed my coat, stuffed the journal in my bag, and headed straight to the hospital. The morning air was cold and sharp, stinging my lungs as I crossed the street. Inside, the lobby was quiet. Too quiet, When I stepped off the elevator onto Lena's floor, I instantly felt something was wrong. 2 nurses whispered in hushed, anxious tones near the station. When they saw me, they exchanged a look, one of those silent warnings people give when words aren't allowed. I hurried forward. What happened? Nurse Eliza bit her lip. Ms. Rowan, we were just about to call you. My heart thudded painfully. Is Lena okay? She's stable, Eliza said quickly. She's safe, but something happened overnight. The floor shifted beneath my feet. What happened? The nurse exhaled shakily. Someone tried to enter her room. For a moment, everything inside me went still. What do you mean, tried? At around 2:40 a.m., Eliza explained. The door alarm triggered. Someone swiped a card and tried to force the door open. They weren't authorized. Security responded within 30 seconds, but the person was already gone. My nails dug into my palms. Did anyone see who it was? Only a glimpse, she said. A man in a hoodie. He kept his head down, but his build matched the description of the person security encountered yesterday. Adrian? My chest tightened so hard I struggled to breathe. Eliza continued in a low voice. We increased security on her floor, and we're keeping her door locked at all times. Only staff and you are allowed inside. I swallowed hard, forcing myself to breathe. I want to see her. She nodded, leading me down the hallway. But when I stepped into the room, the sight of Lena nearly shattered me. She was awake, barely, but her eyes flickered nervously around the room, scanning the corners, the door, the window. She sensed it too. The danger, the presence, the shadow still stalking her. I sat beside her, taking her cold hand gently. It's okay, I whispered. You're safe. They won't touch you. Her lips trembled as she whispered, barely audible. He was here. I heard someone. Trying the door, tears gathered in her eyes. Marissa, don't let him finish what he started. I squeezed her hand. I won't. I promise you I will end this. But deep down, a fear curled inside me. Adrian was spiraling faster than anyone expected, and desperate men did desperate things. That afternoon, the police finally called me, because Adrian had vanished, and what they found in his abandoned bags changed everything. By midday, the hospital felt heavier than usual, as if the walls themselves sensed the danger moving closer. I stayed by Lena's side, refusing to leave her alone even for a moment. She drifted in and out of sleep, each breath a shaky reminder of how fragile she still was. I was adjusting her blanket when my phone rang. Unknown number, police precinct code. My pulse quickened as I stepped into the hallway to answer. This is Marissa Rowan. Mrs. Rowan, this is Officer Rains. We need to speak with you. It's regarding your son. My stomach clenched. What happened? He's missing, the officer said carefully. We attempted to locate him for follow-up questioning this morning, but he never returned to the location where he was dropped off after processing. I rubbed my forehead, closing my eyes. Of course he didn't. That's not the only issue, Rains continued. Earlier today, a groundskeeper reported abandoned, belongings behind a service building, 2 blocks from the condo, bags matching the description given during last night's incident. My breath caught. His bags? Yes, we need you to come down. There are items inside that concern us. Concern, a word officers rarely use lightly. I'll be there, I said. Don't move anything. When I arrived at the small service alley behind the precinct, 2 officers stood guard near a worn-out bench. On it sat the duffel bag and the trash bags Adrian had carried the night before. Only now the bags were half unzipped, as if someone had searched them in a hurry. Officer Rains handed me gloves. Please look. You need to see this yourself. I knelt beside the duffel and opened it fully. Inside lay the clothes he'd snatched from the condo. A cracked phone charger, old sneakers, a broken watch. But beneath those, something far darker. A notebook. Not Lena's. Adrian's. I opened it hesitantly. Page after page contained drawn-out plans, angry scribbles, ideas, rants. Some pages were lined with accusations against Lena. She ruined everything. She made me look weak. She needs to learn. Others were about me. She thinks she's in control. I'll show her what happens when she interferes. My hands began to shake. Officer Rains crouched beside me. There's more. He opened a small evidence bag. Inside was a hospital visitor badge. Fake, cheaply laminated, but identical in design to the real ones worn by staff. He was planning to get inside, the officer said quietly. To reach Lena, we believe. A cold wave rippled through my chest. He wasn't acting impulsively. He was planning. He's escalating, Rains added. And until we locate him, you and Lena are at high risk. We need to implement a full protective order immediately. I nodded, barely trusting my voice. As the officers secured the area, I held Adrian's notebook against my chest, the words searing into my mind. This wasn't confusion. This wasn't anger. This was obsession. And now he had disappeared. That evening, security footage revealed where Adrian went after abandoning his bags, and the place he chose sent a terrifying message directly to me. By the time I returned to the hospital, evening light had turned the windows gold. Lena slept restlessly, her breath shallow, the lines around her eyes tight from fear even in unconsciousness. I sat beside her, keeping one hand on hers, refusing to leave again. But my phone vibrated. A message from Officer Rains. We reviewed nearby CCTV footage. Please come to the security office. My heart tightened. I pressed a soft kiss to Lena's forehead and whispered, I'll be right back. Then I followed the officer down a long corridor into a small security room filled with monitors. 4 screens played different angles of the city, but Rains pointed to the largest one. This is a feed from a camera 3 blocks from where we found his belongings. He hit play. At first, the footage looked harmless, just a quiet side street, dim alley lights flickering. Then, at 3:12 a.m., a familiar figure came into view. Adrian. He moved fast, looking over his shoulder, clutching something under his jacket. He paused on the sidewalk, right in front of a building whose sign became clear when Rains zoomed in. My breath caught. It wasn't a store, not a shelter, not a friend's place. It was the old house. The house where Adrian grew up. The house where his father died. The house that had been vacant for years. A place soaked in memories and ghosts. A place he knew I feared returning to. A place he chose deliberately. Why? Rains let the footage continue. Adrian walked to the front door, looked straight at the camera, almost as if he knew exactly where it was, and smiled. That same cold, twisted smile he'd given me in the hospital lobby. Then he pulled something from his jacket and held it up to the camera. I gasped. It was a framed photo of Lena, from their wedding day, her smile radiant, his arm around her shoulders. He held the picture by the frame edge, then smashed it against the wall. Glass shattered. The photo slid to the ground. He didn't look angry. He looked calm, decisive. He stepped on the picture with deliberate pressure, grinding his heel into Lena's face, shredding the paper, tearing it apart piece by piece. Then he walked inside the house and disappeared. The footage ended. I felt my knees weaken. My hand covered my mouth, holding in the scream building inside. Rains turned to me, voice steady but urgent. Mrs. Rowan, this wasn't random. He wanted you to see this. He wanted you to understand the message. I swallowed. And what message is that? That he's not finished, Rains said quietly. That he's comfortable waiting. And that he's choosing somewhere only you would recognize. A chill ran through me, deep and sharp. Adrian wasn't hiding. He was preparing, and he wanted me to know where to find him. The next morning, the old house called me like a nightmare, and what I found inside proved Adrian was no longer just dangerous. He was unraveling completely. I didn't want to return to that house. Not ever. Not after everything it held. Memories of a marriage that failed, the echoes of arguments Adrian had heard as a child, and the night his father collapsed in the living room while Adrian cried on the stairs. But danger has a way of dragging you back to the places you least want to face. Before sunrise, Officer Rains called. Mrs. Rowan, we can't enter without probable cause. But you can, if you choose to, and we'll be seconds behind you. He didn't need to say more. I put on my coat, told the nurse to call me if Lena stirred, and walked out of the hospital with a heart beating too fast and too hard. The city was still dark, streetlights casting long shadows as I drove toward the old neighborhood. When the house came into view, something inside me tightened. The windows were dark. The yard was overgrown, the paint peeled like old skin, and yet, something in the air felt alive, watching. 2 patrol cars idled quietly down the street, waiting. I stepped out of the car, the cold air biting my face, and approached the front door. The wood was splintered where the wedding photo had been smashed. I touched the handle. It turned. Unlocked. I pushed the door open slowly. The smell hit first, stale alcohol, sweat, and something metallic underneath. The living room was dim, lit only by the faint morning glow leaking through broken blinds. But what stopped me was the sight on the floor. Photos. Dozens of them. All of Lena. Some torn, some stabbed through with a pen. Some circled with black marker. Angry words scribbled in the margins. Liar. Ruined my life. She has to pay. My breath caught as I knelt to pick one up. A picture of Lena laughing in a park. Someone had slashed across her smile, cutting the joy in half. A noise creaked upstairs. I tensed, heart pounding. Adrian? Silence. I took one step, then another. Every inch of the staircase groaned beneath my weight, as if warning me to turn back. But I kept going. The hallway upstairs was darker, colder. A door was half open, the room that used to be Adrian's. I pushed it gently. What I saw inside made the blood drain from my face. The walls were covered, plastered with pages ripped from notebooks. Printouts, hand-drawn sketches. Every inch was filled with obsession. Maps of Lena's hospital floor, timelines of her illness, lists of mistakes she made, and in the center of the room, a single sentence written over and over in thick black ink. If I can't have the life I want, no one will. My knees went weak. I backed away slowly, carefully, my fingers trembling as I reached for my phone. The moment I whispered, "He's dangerous. You need to act now," the officers rushed in. But as they cleared the rooms one by one, Officer Raines's voice broke the silence. "He's not here." The house was empty. Adrian had vanished again. But now, he wasn't just angry. He was unraveling. And just when we thought he had disappeared, the hospital called. Someone had been spotted near Lena's room again. And this time, they caught his face on camera. I was still standing in the hallway of the old house when my phone rang. A shrill, urgent sound that sliced through the silence like a blade. I fumbled to answer it, my breath still uneven. "This is Marissa." "Mrs. Rowan, this is Nurse Eliza." Her voice was trembling. "I need you to come back to the hospital, now." My stomach dropped. "Is Lena okay?" "She's safe," Eliza rushed to assure. "But something happened. Security needs to show you footage." Footage. The word alone made my pulse throb painfully. "I'm on my way," I said, already moving, already running toward the door. The officers tried to stop me politely, ask questions, take statements, but I pushed past them. "We'll talk later. I have to go." The drive back felt endless. Every red light felt like a punishment. Every minute stretched into an eternity. When I finally reached the hospital, I sprinted through the lobby, barely stopping to breathe. Eliza met me near the ICU elevators, looking pale. "What happened?" I demanded. "We caught someone on the secure floor," she whispered. A man tried to access a restricted hallway. He didn't reach Lena's room, but security confronted him. My heart pounded against my ribs. "And?" "He ran," she whispered. "But we caught his face on one of the internal cameras." The elevator doors opened, and she led me to the monitoring station. 2 security guards stood near the screens, tension thick in the air. "Show her," one of them said. The guard rewound the footage, paused, pressed play. The hallway appeared on the screen. Wide, quiet, lit by soft fluorescent light. At 6:17 a.m., a figure stepped into view. A man, hood up, hands in pockets. He moved slowly, surveying the doors, pausing near the supply closet, then inching toward the ICU wing. I leaned closer. "Zoom in," the guard said. The image sharpened. The hood shifted, and his face turned toward the camera. Not enough to show a clear portrait, but enough to remove all doubt. Adrian, his jaw tight, his eyes wild, dark circles carved under them like bruises. A face no mother should ever have to see staring into a hospital camera. A cold tremor ran through me. "He came back," I whispered. "He actually came back." The guard nodded. "He used a temporary staff badge someone must have given him. Luckily, the scanner rejected it before he reached the door." I pressed a hand to my chest, trying to breathe through the crushing weight. "He's getting bolder," the guard added quietly. "More desperate. Desperate men make mistakes. Desperate men get caught. But desperate men also do terrible things before that moment comes." I forced myself to stand tall. "What happens now?" I asked. "We've increased security," the guard said. "But you need to hear the rest." "The rest?" I echoed, cold creeping up my spine. "Yes," he said grimly. "We found something on the camera a minute later. Something he left behind on the floor. It wasn't a weapon. It wasn't a note. It was something far worse. something that revealed exactly what Adrian planned to do next. The guard's expression was grim, the kind of look people wear when they know what they're about to show you will change everything. He clicked the next camera angle, and the footage switched to a low shot from the far end of the hallway. This was recorded exactly 1 minute after Adrian ran, the guard said. The screen showed an empty hallway at first, just white linoleum, floors and softly glowing overhead lights. Then as the camera panned, something caught my eye. A small object lying in the middle of the hallway tiles. The guard zoomed in. My breath froze. It was Lena's necklace, her wedding necklace, the one she wore every day until she fell sick. A delicate silver pendant shaped like a teardrop, engraved on the back with the date of their wedding. A necklace that should have been in her belongings bag, locked in a drawer. Safe, unreachable, but it was here, on the floor, in a restricted hallway Adrian had tried to access. How? I whispered, my voice too thin to carry the weight of the question. We checked Lena's room, the guard said quietly. Her personal items were untouched. Her necklace is missing. We believe he took it the first night she was brought in. My knees weakened. He was there before, I whispered. Before any of us realized. He was already close to her. The guard nodded. And this, he added, is a message. I looked at the screen again, at the necklace lying under the harsh, fluorescent lights. A message, not a threat written on paper, not a weapon left behind, not damage he caused. No, this was intimate, personal, a symbol. He didn't want to kill her quickly. He wanted her terrified. He wanted us terrified. He wanted to show he could reach her whenever he wanted. The guard lowered his voice. We think he dropped the necklace on purpose. To show control, to show he's not afraid of cameras anymore. My stomach twisted, nausea rising. A man who feels invisible is dangerous. A man who feels invincible is lethal. Officer Rains arrived moments later, having been briefed already. His jaw was tight with frustration. We're elevating this case, he said. This isn't stalking anymore. This is targeted intent. You and Lena are now under full protective watch. What does that mean? I asked. It means, he said firmly, you don't go anywhere alone. Lena doesn't stay in a regular ICU room anymore, and Adrian is now considered a direct threat. I nodded slowly, absorbing the weight of his words. But the guard interrupted softly. There's something else. He handed me a small evidence pouch. Inside was a second item Adrian had dropped, one that made my heart stop completely. A keycard. Not a fake one. Not a stolen visitor pass. A real hospital staff access card. Deactivated, yes, but real. Which meant only one terrifying thing. Someone inside the hospital was helping him. And when we traced the access card back to its owner, the identity of the person, helping Adrian shocked us all and proved this nightmare was far from over. The moment I saw the hospital staff access card inside the evidence pouch, something inside me tightened, like a rope pulled around my chest. My mind raced, through every face I'd seen. Here, doctors, nurses, cleaners, security. Who, among them, would help someone like Adrian? Officer Rains motioned for the head of security. Trace the card now. The guard nodded and hurried to the computer. His fingers flew across the keyboard, pulling up the hospital's access logs, a list of staff names and ID. Numbers scrolled across the screen until it finally stopped on one entry. Card ID S4129, assigned to Mark Callan, custodial staff. Mark. My stomach dropped. He was the quiet janitor I had seen every morning near the ICU, middle-aged, soft-spoken, always pushing his cleaning cart with headphones in. I remembered thanking him one morning when he opened a door for me. He had smiled politely, eyes downcast. Never once did I think he had noticed us. Never once did I imagine he was involved. The guard clicked his profile. Callan clocked out early last night, he said. Left at 5 p.m., but his card was scanned on the 3rd floor at 6:12 a.m. That means someone else used it. Rains crossed his arms. He either gave it willingly, or it was taken from him. Let's find him, the guard said. We hurried down to the basement level where custodial staff kept their supplies. The hallways were empty, echoing with the hum of old lights. When we reached the janitor's break room, a supervisor met us at the door, eyebrows knitted with confusion. What's going on? Where's Mark Callan? Rains asked. The supervisor swallowed, looking uneasy. He didn't show up for his shift today, first time in 12 years. Rains stiffened. Do you have an address for him? The supervisor hesitated. Yes, but He lives in an old trailer park just outside the city, and he's had problems recently, money issues, family problems. He was desperate for extra cash. The word desperate hit me like a stone. Desperate men help desperate men. The supervisor disappeared to get the file. While we waited, I leaned against the wall, trying to steady my breathing. My mind played the pieces back. Adrian needed a way inside. Mark had access to almost every floor. Mark was struggling financially. Adrian knew how to manipulate weakness. He always had. Rains turned to me. This doesn't necessarily mean Mark is loyal to him. He could have been intimidated, threatened. But Lena's words echoed in my mind. Don't let him finish what he started. Adrian didn't need loyalty. He just needed access. And Mark had given it to him. The supervisor returned with a folder. Rains opened it, and his eyes widened. What is it? I whispered. He slowly handed me a photo clipped to the top of the file. My breath stopped. There, in a blurry image from a month earlier, stood Mark, laughing with Adrian outside the hospital entrance. They knew each other, long before any of this began. Now we knew Adrian wasn't acting alone, and the person helping him had vanished too. But the final confrontation was coming, and it would unfold in the last place I ever expected, inside the hospital itself. For the rest of the afternoon, the hospital felt like a tightening trap. Security doubled on every floor, nurses whispering nervously, officers pacing near the elevators. Adrian was out there somewhere, unhinged, furious, and no longer working alone. And now Mark, the janitor who had given him access, had vanished too. I barely left Lena's side. Her breathing was steadier now, but her eyes were full of something deeper than illness. Terror. She knew Adrian better than anyone, and she knew what he was capable of. The sky had darkened when Officer Rains returned with news. Mark's trailer was found abandoned, he said. Door open, lights on. He left in a hurry. Is Adrian with him? I asked. We don't know, Rains replied. But we believe they're working together. My pulse quickened. What now? We wait, he said. And we watch. The waiting lasted less than 20 minutes. At 8:14 p.m., alarms erupted through the ICU corridor. Unauthorized access, east stairwell. Rains reacted instantly. Stay here. Lock the door behind us. He and 2 security guards sprinted down the hallway. Nurses began locking medicine rooms, securing patients, lowering blinds. My heart hammered in my ears as I locked Lena's door and pressed my back against it. Lena stirred in her bed, her voice barely a whisper. Is it him? I didn't answer. I couldn't. Footsteps thundered down the hallway. Shouting. A crash. Someone fought. Someone screamed. Then silence. Terrifying silence. I held my breath as footsteps approached again. Slow. Uneven. Dragging. The sound grew closer until a shadow appeared under the door. I froze. Then, a light knock. Soft. Too soft. I felt my blood turn to ice. Mom? Adrian's voice croaked from the other side. Please open the door. No, not soft. Broken. Twisted. I didn't speak. He tried again, voice rising with frustration. Mom, I know you're in there. You think you can hide her? You think you can keep control? I grabbed the emergency button on the wall. He rattled the handle. Hard. Then harder. Then violently. Open the door! Lena whimpered behind me. I stood between him and her, shaking but unmovable. Adrian, I said through the door. My voice shaking but strong. This is the last time you will ever come near her. Or me. He slammed his fist against the door. She ruined my life. You ruined my life. I'm not leaving without what's mine. The moment he screamed those words, the hallway erupted with voices. Step back. Drop it. Put your hands where we can see them. A struggle. A crash. A strangled cry. Then Rains' voice, firm, breathless. Mrs. Rowan. It's over. I opened the door cautiously. Adrian lay on the ground, restrained, shouting curses into the floor as 2 officers cuffed him. Mark was already against the wall, hands zip-tied, eyes wild with panic. As they dragged them both away, Adrian twisted to look at me, hatred and heartbreak twisted together. You'll regret this, he screamed. Both of you. I didn't flinch. I closed the door. Then I turned to Lena, took her trembling hand and whispered, No, Adrian. This time, we're finally free.